6th. We did meet informally as a group to discuss changing the Pledge of Allegiance to the Eagles chant. That motion was denied, so we'll just proceed with the Pledge of Allegiance if you join us. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. First, I'd like to begin with public comment on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. Keep in mind that if you are here for an item that's on the agenda, we will get to you. But if you'd like to make public comment prior to us getting into the meat and potatoes of tonight's agenda, you're more than welcome. Please come up, state your name and where you're from and your business. All right, seeing none. Let's get into the approval of minutes for our last meeting. So I want to just call out two items on the prior meeting's minutes. This is the January 4th meeting. Zoning Hearing Board Appeal 3151, 317 Ivan Avenue. The minutes today reflect that Commissioner Brubaker voted no in recommending approval to 317 Ivan. Commissioner Brubaker, is that correct? I remember you voting.
Yeah, no, that's not.
Okay, all right, we'll make that change. Probably my fault in not recording that correctly. You were probably out of camera view. Also, Zoning Hearing Board Appeal number 3146, 150 to 168 Lancaster Avenue. The minutes of the meeting currently reflect that Commissioner Kim voted no in recommending approval to that one. Commissioner Kim, which way did you vote?
I voted yes.
Okay, all right. So we voted to approve both items unanimously. So did anybody else review any changes that we need to make?
Wait, I'm going to confuse myself. On that one, was that about the
Steep slopes.
laying, the tabling? I was against tabling. I wanted to pursue.
No, so this was the minor subdivision where on Ivan Avenue where they wanted to turn that into two lots with very minor steep slope issue in the front.
Oh, yeah, I was.
I thought you were in favor as well.
I'm sorry, I just, in looking at the meeting, I confused myself on which we were talking about.
Yeah, no worries. Anybody else with the minutes? All right, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of the January 4th meeting?
So moved.
All right, can I get a second? Second by Golis. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
All right, minutes are approved. Item number A, this is planning module for 200 South Ithan. Just want to go on the record that this was executed by me, and it's in the possession of staff. All right. Let's move on to the next item. This is application 206746, 1001 Eagle Road, land development.
Excuse me for 1 second, Mr. Chair. I have to recuse myself on this one matter. I have a contractual relationship with Mr. Lambert's firm on a temporary basis, and it's not appropriate for me to vote or consider this particular project because of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kanda. So noted.
Pardon me, just give me 1 more minute to open up the rest. Good evening. Rob Lambert here on behalf of the applicant. Saw you last month, and it's the same project. Tonight I do have a few other people with me. I have Greg Lingo, the developer, George Brosman, if there's any legal questions. I have Patrick Stewart, the landscape architect, and Chris Williams, the traffic engineer. So if there's any questions as we go through the process, I do have them available to answer any questions. We did resubmit based on our last meeting, and when we resubmitted, as expected, we have additional review letters. What I did in the review letters is I highlighted them, and I just wanted to help clarify what was here, what is no additional action, right? And really that's just, it was a comment, either it says at the end it was resolved, or you have to pay a fee later, or there's something else that we have to do. The green was Board of Commissioners, and the yellow's a little bit hard to see here, was just really a drafting update. But I wanted to kind of not have to go through each comment, but really just look at the letters as a total. So I'm going to scroll through these here, if you don't mind. The first was the sections was asking about the waivers. Same 3 waivers we requested last time. One was for preliminary final. The second was not to show significant features within 500 feet of the site. We'll provide anything that the township needs, but it was kind of just a typical waiver. And then the last one is really an optional waiver. We have a plan that meets code that we provided, and we have an alternate plan which had an alternate landscaping proposal which requires a waiver. Both the by right plan and the waiver plan are both supported by the Shade Tree Commission. So I'm going to scroll down here. So you can see the gray ones I'm just going to skip over, right? It's really no action needed. It's really been kind of later or been resolved. And so if you see, let's see here. So we get to the first one that has something that we need to change. We have to change a label on one of the plans just to say which building the pool is in. The plan now says that it includes all the accessory, building A has the accessories. They wanted something more specific to say that the pool was located in building A. Number 4, this is really for the Board of Commissioners. They can ask, it's not that they must ask, they can ask for additional right-of-way. We're okay providing the right-of-way. We've actually proposed a little bit less to be able to save the guardhouse building that's currently there. If the commissioners would like more, we're happy to provide more, but the building, it would either have to go around the building or the building would be within the right-of-way. 5 and 6, no action needed. The stormwater one, no action needed. For sanitary sewer, again, we'll have to just look at, do a little more research on the existing buildings that are coming down to identify the pipe network that's related to them. Again, 2 and 3, no action needed. And the last one was for any deep manhole, we need a safety platform, right? So we just have to change our detail a little bit there. So that was the Gannett Fleming letter. As you can see, there's only a couple minor items that are drafting changes, nothing that will substantively change the plan.
I'm going to go out of turn here. Mr. Phillips, would you like to make some comment?
No, I agree with Rob's presentation that him and I have spoken numerous times about my review letter, and that's accurate.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Oh. I'll jump over to Damon's letter here. Again, same format, same colors. Damon identifies the same waivers. Traffic impact study comments, again, no action needed. We have the same, actually, no, E2 and E3 are really the same comment related to the right-of-way. Again, that was the commissioner one we talked about. 4A, there was a question about the emergency access that he has in here in the slope of it. We've met with the fire department, with the township fire marshal, gone over it. It's a additional item. It's actually not required. We worked with Valley Forge actually to obtain an easement to be able to provide this secondary access. It's 11 or 12% slope just from grades that we have to meet. Both the fire department, everyone knows that it was going to be a little bit steeper, but we're happy to have the access. In Damon's letter, he talks about a 10% slope, and that's really for the road. Our main road is under 10%. The emergency access is not. Going down, the kind of next three, B, C, and D, all really relate to vertical curves. And so vertical curves are just when you're doing grading on the profile, it comes to a point. It's just adding a little bit of a curve in there. Again, it's not going to change any design element substantively. We're just going to make those minor changes. 5, the first part of 5 is no action. The last part, what do you have on the last part there? I just want to get sure I'm looking at the right one. Is, again, it's really just drafting, showing, being more clear where there's safety railing or fencing along sidewalks and roads. That, again, is just clarifying that. 6, clearing up some of the labels that were on the plan. 7 was a section on the pavement profile, just showing what the thicknesses of the pavement were. 9 was providing details for the guide rail. 10 is a little bit of striping, and 11 is additional signage. So again, kind of very minor modifications to the plan there that are needed as part of that.
And I'm assuming that you're going to be able to comply on the things that...
Yes, with the clarification for the emergency access, but yes. That was
Okay. I needed to state that on the record. All right, very good. Mr. Drummond.
What Rob has said is accurate regarding the slope on emergency access. I will defer to the emergency services here to make sure if they're okay with it, that should be acceptable.
Okay, very good. So I guess the question tonight is whether to grant you preliminary approval or preliminary final. You're requesting preliminary final?
We're requesting preliminary final. I know Mr. Golis had some questions. We brought Chris Williams if there's any traffic questions, but tonight we are asking for a preliminary final.
Okay, sounds good. We'll get to it. All right, Commissioner comment.
Yeah, so if I can go for a bit here, I am much in favor of this project in general. I have only one traffic concern, and Rob knows about it. We've talked. I sat on the driveway a couple times, trying to figure out like how you get out of this complex. Where I come from, I'm used to a facility just like this in San Antonio that had 2 ways in and 2 ways out. One was signaled and one was not. I'm very concerned about the one in, one out, the ingress and egress just being one way in, one way out. I think for a number of reasons. Eagle Road, 35 miles an hour. As you go by Cabrini, it goes down to 25 miles an hour. Whether people do that or not I don't know. But all I can say is that when you come around the Cabrini curve, you have a sense of something's happening in a hurry in front of you. So maybe there could be some signs that indicate there's a driveway coming out when you're going around that curve. What I thought would be the best thing to do, if it's possible and feasible and it's creative, but maybe this would work, would be to have a left-hand turn coming out of the complex and a right-hand turn coming out of the complex. So you have a dedicated left-hand turn lane if you have the room to do that. It just seems to me that gives people an option that they don't otherwise have. And I have to think that because of the use of this place, the unique use of this place as a senior care facility, you have to admit that the drivers are not going to be, the drivers may have issues that some normal driver may not. So to give somebody more time and to give somebody an option seemed to me to be a practical, creative thing if it's possible to do. And I just, that's really my only issue with the traffic. And I also think that the entrance of a place sets the tone for the rest of the place. And I think that the more welcoming and ease of use type thing they have going on there, the better. So
Yeah, so I'll address kind of generally, and then I'll have Chris address more technically. So generally, some of your concerns were our concerns. That was, Chris was one of our first consultants hired to take a look at the driveway, because if we didn't have safe access, there was no point in doing a project. And so we did look at it very closely. Chris actually did a speed study he can talk about, looking at the speed of the vehicles on the road at Eagle Road here in this section. Also, one of the things, because I've done the same thing you have, is sat there and looked out. And under the current configuration, I agree with you, it's difficult. There's a fence line that comes very out close to the road, and it's kind of overgrown where Valley Forge has it. So when you're looking left, you're really obstructed by that fence, and when you kind of have to nudge out a little bit to be able to see left. The plan is to remove all of that fence, remove any of the vegetation along there. And when we do that, we can actually see all the way down to the curve. It might be a little bit deceiving right now, but when all that gets removed, your sight line improves dramatically. I'd say it would quadruple from what it's out there today. But I'll let Chris address some of the more technical pieces of it.
Thank you, Rob. All good comments, and I agree with what Rob has said as well. This section of Eagle Road is probably best described as a bit of a challenge. There's some unique geometry to this roadway. The road, I think, in this area is posted at 35 miles an hour, but there are some curves in that area which make it challenging. There is advisory reduced speed curve warning signs in this area. We did conduct speed studies. Given the nature of the roadway and the curvature of the road, this is one of those rare cases where the actual speed of traffic matches the speed limit. So what we found is that traffic is traveling, it was 33 miles an hour in one direction, 34 miles an hour in the other direction, and it's posted at 35. So really the nature of the road, the design of Eagle Road, it's that the geometry of Eagle Road is really helping to control those speeds. You can imagine if it was a straight road, traffic would be traveling faster. So to the point that Rob is speaking about, it is hard to visualize an access to this community as it exists today, right? So the driveway serving the property today, it's a narrow driveway. It's really only wide enough for one vehicle. I stopped back out there today before the meeting. I was exiting the property. Somebody wanted to turn in. There's no room for them to pull into the site. So in the future, what is out there in the future with this development will be very different than what's out there today. We're taking the fence down, we're cutting back the vegetation, we're going to be opening up sight lines, so it will be better than it is today. Also, the driveway today, it's, I'm not sure the width of the driveway today, it's probably 14, 16 feet wide. It's going to be a 26-foot wide driveway. So it'll have a much grander entrance, it'll be a much more welcoming entrance to the community in the future. As a 26-foot wide road, a 13-foot inbound lane, a 13-foot exiting lane, it will be easier to pull in and out of this community. That, combined with the clearing of the fence and the vegetation, will open up sight lines significantly. And those are all really requirements for this project to have safe access. In terms of your comment, and I'm on the fence with your comment, because I do think in certain situations, providing two exiting lanes, a separate left and a separate right turn lane, can make a lot of sense. Ultimately, Eagle Road is a state road, so we don't have control over what we do in terms of the design of the driveway. Plans have just been submitted to PennDOT to secure a highway occupancy permit. That is a multi-month process, and we have just started that process with PennDOT. Ultimately, it's going to be their decision as to what the access looks like and how it's designed. I will tell you, though, in my experience, PennDOT typically, for an unsignalized driveway, which is what this is, a stop-control driveway, they generally do not favor having a separate exit and a separate exiting left turn lane and a separate exiting right turn lane. Reason being is, and maybe even more so with this community, given the population of the community, what can happen is if you have somebody exiting the property in the left lane, waiting to turn left, somebody pulls up alongside in the exiting right turn lane, what happens is that vehicle sitting in the left turn lane ends up becoming we've created a sight distance obstruction. So if I'm exiting the community wishing to turn right, I have to look to my left and I have to see through that vehicle in the adjacent lane. So PennDOT tends to shy away from separate left and right turn exit lanes, and I think that's going to be their position in this case, given the nature of the community and given some of the challenges that we have on Eagle Road. Now, we've just submitted the plans based on the design as a, a single entrance lane, a single exit lane. If PennDOT comes back and decides that this would make more sense for separate exiting left and right turn lanes, and we'll have no choice but to comply. But I don't think that's what they're going to be looking for here, just because of the sight distance issues that it creates.
So it's not a situation where you can do something that you want to do, even if the PennDOT approval is not, it's set in stone?
It is, ultimately it is, yes. We have to abide by whatever they require.
So how would they know you would even consider like a separate left-hand turn lane?
Well, I mean, they wouldn't unless they were to ask us, but I can tell you that from my experience on other similar applications, it likely would not be approved, which is why we didn't propose it.
Okay. Down the road, if you guys do what you're going to do, and trust me, it's way different from what I'm experiencing by sitting there. I can hear that it's going to be wider, it's going to be flatter, it's going to be sightlines, it's going to be better. So I'm willing to say I'm fine with that. Down the road, though, if you start to think, we're getting jammed, we got some issues, would you be open to like an alternative that created better flow?
Yeah.
If you get a flow problem, say like 6 months in or.
Yeah, absolutely, right? People are going to be, not constantly, but coming, to purchase a home here or live in this facility. And as you pointed out, is the entrance is paramount to that, right? Is that's your first impression pulling in, and it's the last impression leaving is when you're pulling out, right? So we want, a good impression pulling in and a good impression, the last impression pulling out, that, you have a safe and operable driveway.
Okay, so for the rest of the commission, I'm fine with the explanation, and, I accept the plan, and I wasn't aware of some of these things, some of the improvements that I don't see now, so.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Golas. Anybody else?
Chairman, I have a comment. So would it affect the marketability of this development if you considered a sort of a landscape triangle and then to have it right in, right out, just to address Commissioner Golas's comment about safety? And
so looking at, the sight distance, right, is adequate for, and Chris can talk about it again, is, for a full turning movement driveway. And in some instances, actually, PennDOT doesn't like to limit it when it is available to make those full turning movements, because people will make the movement that you're trying to prevent them from making, which actually creates a less safe environment. So a lot of times they do look at having if it's available to have a full service intersection, that's what they would do.
So if I can just offer the biggest sight distance issue that exists out there today is exiting the property looking to the left.
yeah,
And a right in, right out doesn't solve that. We still have that issue, because if you're exiting and you want to turn right, you still need to look to your left. And that condition will be significantly improved with the removal of the fence and the clearing of the vegetation. I didn't hear all of Rob's response, but sometimes with a right in, right out configuration, all you're doing is you're now sending traffic more circuitously through the township, and that's not always in the best interest. So, we're confident that if we can design an access that's safe, and to me, what defines safe is having adequate sight lines, that really is the best approach. The other point to remember is a lot of the traffic isn't necessarily the residents that are driving, it's the employees, it's the staff. They have a shuttle service proposed on site, and so that's the majority of the traffic coming to and from the property. Unless, if we had a sight distance obstruction that we could not solve, then yes, that might be the solution, but that's not the case here, and I would recommend against a right in, right out in this situation. I don't think it's the right thing to do.
okay.
Any other commissioner comment? All right. So I guess the real question here is whether we should, as a commission, grant preliminary or preliminary final. And there's a school of thought out there that states that a project of this size should only get preliminary approval.
So I can address that. About 2 years ago, I think almost to the month, We started having our meetings with township officials, staff, reviewers, and the community. And at that time, it was suggested that we actually submit a preliminary final. And the idea behind that was we were having a very open dialogue with everyone. You know, we actually redesigned our entire site because of that dialogue, right? Our original plan was to actually have the building, the main building, out closer to Eagle Road and having a different housing type at the top. And we listened to the community, redesigned, refiled zoning applications, came back in and really took every step of the way, was doing everything we could to answer comments and really create an overall process, right? And so having a preliminary, which would typically have less information to it, and then coming back with final, which adds information to it, we've been providing that information all along, really to answer all of the questions, you know, for the entire process. And I think you can see here tonight, I didn't recognize anybody. I'm not sure if anybody's here for this application, but in our last several public meetings, we haven't had any public come out to the meetings because we have had that process. We've had, you know, dozens of individual meetings, group meetings. Anybody that's wanted to meet, I actually think most of the planning commissions come to the site. We've had the shade tree to the site. And the whole purpose was because everybody said, you know, ask for the preliminary final because you can go through this process and be, you know, make it efficient, but really add in all those extra meetings for that process.
Sure. So I think at this point it would be appropriate to hear from the public. If there's any public comment, please come up, state your name. Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to grant preliminary final approval in the matter of 1001 Eagle Road. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? It's unanimous. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for coming. Next item, application 208661, Stratford Ave and Eagle Road, St. Honore, final land development.
How's everyone doing? Good to see everybody. Happy New Year. We're back for this project. Dave Falcone here on behalf of the applicant. We are back tonight seeking a recommendation for final land development approval. You may recall, I think the last time we were in front of this planning commission, we were seeking preliminary final. We thought we were kind of on that path, and the planning commission made a recommendation for that. It ultimately went to the Board of Commissioners, and they thought it prudent to send it back, but they did approve preliminary unanimously. Really the only change since the last time we were here, if you all recall, we had been in front of the shade tree and they were split on our application at that point. We used that extra time to go back to the shade tree. We made some changes to the landscaping, worked with some of the neighbors to address some of their concerns, and ultimately the shade tree recommended approval unanimously. So that brought us back. So we feel like we're in a pretty good position with where the plan stands. It's been submitted. We have review letters back with just a couple of minor comments that are all will comply. Michael Boker's here. He can address those letters if the Planning Commission wants to walk through them. But we're kind of back with virtually the same plan we were before you with last time, but now just seeking final instead of the preliminary final.
Sure. If you don't mind indulging me here,
Sure.
Could you just take us briefly through the waivers that you're requesting?
Michael can, for sure, yep.
Very good.
The waivers that we were asking for in conjunction with this plan included the one section 255-20B1N to allow information depicted on the vicinity plan to be accepted for depicting infrastructure and other features within 500 feet of the subject site. So much like the previous application, we did not provide all that information, but did provide an aerial that showed that area on the plans. 255-27C1, to not install the required sidewalk to the full extent on both sides of the cul-de-sac to allow for buffer plantings. If you recall, we were going to install the sidewalk, actually picking it up on the adjacent neighbor's property, extending it along the frontage of Eagle, down the one side of the cul-de-sac, and then stopping kind of at the cul-de-sac bulb. So we would have sidewalks in front of all the houses, but not on the other side where we could then provide a very good buffer to those neighboring properties. 255-27C, to not install the required curbing and cartway along Stratford Avenue due to prevailing existing conditions and to avoid conflict with existing utilities. So right now, there's a utility line that runs down Stratford Avenue, and there's poles basically right up against the curbing. And we propose to match and kind of continue the scheme of development from the corner at Eagle down where it does have a 4-foot wide sidewalk, no curbing, and we would extend that from the edge of our property, actually all the way down to the township line, across a couple of the adjacent properties as well. To not install the required cartway along Eagle Road due to existing conditions and the limited frontage. We don't propose to widen Eagle Road at this point. Again, we would at least match what has been done along these lots, but did not see the need to expand for such a limited distance along Eagle when it was not done when this development went in recently. And to not install sidewalk with the exception of a safe refuge landing area on the north side of our proposed road. Sidewalk does not continue past our site. In fact, we at one point shifted the road over so that we could limit impacts to the one mature tree on the adjacent property. So we didn't want to extend that sidewalk, just pushing it further to nowhere, and then limit as much as possible the impacts to that tree. So we will provide a depressed curb and safe refuge, kind of like a 5x5 landing area on that side of the road for the sidewalk, in lieu of extending it all the way to the property line.
What kind of tree is it, for the record?
Pin oak? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
pin oak, I believe.
very good.
I'm not sure if I got.
Mr. Chairman? Question for Dave. Weren't these waivers granted by the Board of Commissioners at the time of preliminary land development approval?
They were, Mary, yep. All of these were granted at that point. No additional waivers are being sought at final that weren't approved at preliminary. Thanks,
Okay,
Mary.
very good. Thanks for the clarification, Mary. Mr. Phillips, any comments from you?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, comment?
Well, I was going to ask about the curbing. I had two questions about the curbing. One is, from an engineering standpoint, is curbing a good idea? Or, I mean, in the best circumstances, would you put curbing in on Stratford? That's one question. The other question is pedestrian safety. Does curbing create any more pedestrian safety than not having curbing? So those are my two questions. Like, from an engineering point of view, from a safety pedestrian point of view, is not putting the curbing in a bad idea?
So to install curb, typically you would also have to widen the roadway. The installation of curb actually restricts the driver's feeling of the roadway width, so they want to stay 1 to 2 feet further away from that edge of road when you don't have curbing. Currently, there is no curbing, or I would say there's a limited old curb along this edge of the road that we would maintain still along our property. We don't necessarily need it for drainage reasons, and we do provide a verge between the roadway and the sidewalk along Stratford Avenue.
And then from a pedestrian point of view, like I live on West Wayne Avenue, so we have sidewalk on one side of the street, and people and school buses go 45 miles an hour on that, and people walk their dogs and their kids. And the curbing is the last thing that's going to save somebody's life, because if somebody veered and there was no curbing, they would just take out whatever is on the sidewalk. In this case, they may not even go up onto the sidewalk. I'm just saying, because what we heard from a lot of people that live around here was like Stratford's sort of a very hard road to walk on as for a pedestrian. And I heard a lot of concern about that. So I just want to make sure that, like, we're not taking the easy way out here. And I know it's not the easy way out. That's my bad words, but I mean, Steve, do you have any feelings about, like, as an engineer, about like curbing? Is curbing better than not curbing?
So, and Mr. Boker can talk to this, as could Damon, but so when there is no verge, when the curb is right up against the street, you want the curbing, right? When you do have that grass strip and that distance is not defined, curbing is not necessarily required. That answers your question.
Yeah, I don't feel like I need to make a federal case out of it, okay? Especially if the Board of Commissioners has already blessed this. So it was just on my mind.
Thank you, Commissioner Gullis. Any other commissioner comment?
I have one question. And Dave, and I think we've talked about this when you were here previously. As far as the sidewalk that you're not putting in to the left,
On
coming
the,
out
up Eagle Road there?
with the tree there, were you making some type of provision for future?
Yes,
Can you just
so
explain that?
we are going to make a provision in our documents with the community that to the extent that area is needed in the future, that it will be granted back so a sidewalk can be installed. So there won't be any issues as far as, well, you can't have it, and there'll just be an empty spot. So we'll make provision for the sidewalk in the event sidewalk is ever installed. I want to say north just because it's up, but north on Eagle Road, that they'll be able to put sidewalk there. Yeah, thanks, Lane.
I have a comment, Chairman. And I realized that I've been only on this commission for a little over a month, so, and I know this project has been brewing for much longer than that. I know this neighborhood. I take the train from the Stratford station. I sometimes walk through this neighborhood to either go get a rental car from Enterprise or whatever it is. My understanding is that you're not providing any sidewalks on Stratford Avenue, correct?
We are providing Stratford, sidewalks all the way along Stratford Avenue, even beyond our site to the Township line. So we're installing sidewalks from down on this end all the way up, and there's sidewalk here now. So
Okay.
we're connecting. So there'll be a connection from here on our project, kind of down in the bulb, around out to Eagle, down Eagle to connect. There'll be existing sidewalk there. We will pick it up and take it all the way to the Township line.
Well, forgive the pun here, but I'm trying to make sure that we see the forest and not just the trees. And the forest here is a greater walkability in Wayne. Towards greater walkability, I would recommend that this design not be a cul-de-sac, but actually punch through the site and connect out to Stratford Avenue so that you can have that circulation. I would imagine that the people that live there, if they're taking the train, they don't want to walk all the way out to Eagle and then down Stratford to walk to Stratford Station, which is what they have to do now, correct?
If from the cul-de-sac, they have to come out Eagle.
Yep.
To Eagle, down Eagle, and then out Stratford. That's correct.
Right. It's a more compact, walkable neighborhood if you can just come straight out onto Stratford, since you do control the right-of-way or the land that comes out onto. I understand that that is in the way of two homes, and that has a bearing on economics. I get that. But I just want to state that for the record. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other commissioner comment? All right, let's hear from the public if you have any comments.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Peckett. I live at 3 Madison Lane in Wayne. Townhouses, if you're looking at the map to the right. And my question is that the sidewalks that are being put in without curbs, because there's going to be a verge, is that correct? Am I understanding that? that the professional HOA will maintain those sidewalks all the way around the property, maintain snow removal, putting down those delicious things that stop the ice when everybody's walking?
Let's have the applicant answer on the record.
So the applicant will maintain its sidewalks. That's correct, snow removal, things like that.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Any further public comment? All right. So I would like to make a motion to recommend granting final approval. Can I get a second? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
Okay. One nay from Commissioner Kim. All right. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you all very much for your time on this project. We appreciate it.
All right. Very good. All right. Zoning Hearing Board Appeal 3155, Villanova.
Nick Canelli, representing Villanova University. This is a zoning hearing application. The project is located across the street on North Ithan from the Pavilion and Davis Center. It's an existing parking structure. It is 2 stories currently. We're seeking to put 2 more stories on the structure for parking. We need relief for setbacks on the railroad, and actually we will not be any closer than the current structure to the railroad. We also need relief on setback from Ithan Avenue, and again, we won't be any closer to Ithan Avenue than the current structure. So 3 variances we are requesting: setback from the railroad, setback from the front yard setback on Ithan, and then variance for height. And I'll turn it over to Mary Lou and Chris, who will describe the project for you.
Get rid of their... Sorry about this. Let me go to D. Actually, G. Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Mary Lou Smith from Villanova, and I just want to walk you through this project. So we would like to, as Nick said, we have an existing garage that we would like to replace with a new garage. And the variants that we're requesting are the parking space sizes, the building height, and the building right-of-way setback from Ithan Avenue, as well as the setback from the property line, which the only property line that's affected is the one at the railroad tracks. So if you look at this campus map, you can see kind of in red, this is the location we're talking about. So this is Ithan Avenue, and there's Route 30. That's the pavilion, and this is the existing garage there. So the existing garage
and I could go back. The existing garage, the entrance and exit is from our campus interior. It is not from Ithan Avenue. So we come into the main gate, and there is a driveway that takes you to the garage. When we designed this garage, we went through land development, and we got approval for 3 levels. We only had 2, but it was designed for a third to be added to it. And we did not add that third because it was a steel garage, and we had problems with it from the beginning. So it is now, 20 years later, and instead of putting another level in it, we'd like to replace it. And the total spaces in this garage is 175. So again, here's just another location and aerial that shows you the existing footprint, which you can see right here, and this is the top level of the garage now. And this is just a photograph of the HSB garage from Ithan Avenue. This is a rendering of the new garage, the proposed garage, in the same similar location. The view is from Ithan Avenue. And then this is the rendering from our campus, the interior of campus. So when you come into the main guard shack, you would make a right, similar to the way you would go to the HSB garage now, and you would enter down at the bottom. We thought that we would show you just kind of like different views from around campus to show you the little impact that we think this would have on our neighbors. So this is from the corner of Ithan and 30. The existing, Ithan or HSB garage is back there where my arrow is. The proposed new location is there, and it shows up as blue because it's blue. But if it were the same color and renderings of the buildings, you probably wouldn't even notice it. And what you can see from that too is that the height of this garage is really no higher than Bartley when you look at the grade changes there. Here's a view from Ithan and Kerwin Road, which are our neighbors in Lower Merion, to kind of show you what their view would be. Again, the blue is if you looked beyond that on this one, you probably can see the existing cars on the garage. So it's not that much higher. And then this is as you come a little closer, right at the corner of County Line and Ithan. I believe to the left these are on either side. There are tenants there that are Villanova students that rent that house there. And then this is our facilities area up here. And this is a photo from 320 to show you the very minimal impact that it would have if you were driving by on 320. You could see from there, that's the new garage, or the proposed garage. And then here's another one that we took from Rodney Circle. So we took a picture. Here is the existing, and showing this right here is kind of just trying to show you that you would not see it at all. Like, this is the height of it if you had no pavilion, no Davis Center, and no trees. So it really is, there's no impact from this neighborhood to see this new garage. Or there's minimal, I guess you should say. And then here's County Line Road, and we did the same thing. We're showing you the blue box because it's so low that you will not see it through the trees, Davis Center, and the pavilion. And the houses starting here and all the way around the corner are Villanova-owned properties. This one is not ours, right? Okay. So that's just kind of like I wanted to give you a bearing of the area and what the impact would be on the area or how we saw it. This next slide is just go through what the proposed garage structure will be. So it has a similar entrance and exit locations. It'll be 4 stories. Parking stalls, we're asking for 8'6" by 19. There will be an additional 232 parking spots. The garage will be constructed with precast structure, and it will be clad in stone, similar to our other buildings on campus. We will add an elevator, and we feel that it will improve pedestrian safety and accessibility. The variances we're asking, just to repeat them, are the parking space sizes, building height, building setback, and the setback from the property line. And these are the building height, we're looking at 52.7 feet, the building setback 33.1, and I'll go through each one of these, and the setback from the property line 6 feet. The 33.1 and the 6 feet, the building setback as the property line one, are exactly the same as what we have today. So this is, we're going to go through the building height, and if you look at our campus map, again, this is where the proposed structure is. We have a list of buildings that are their average height above grade that are above the 38 feet or 3 stories. And I highlighted the 3 that are close to this proposed location, and that is our nursing school, Bartley Hall, which is on the corner of 30 and Ithan, and the Pavilion. And so this would not feel so out of place with the rest of these buildings being at that height. This slide is to show you that although we're asking, it's 52.7 feet and potentially will be less, this grade from here to here almost makes it a couple feet higher because of the grade elevation. When you do a calculation in Radnor, you have to do it every 20 feet around the site. So if you have this grade change that much, your average height is going to, based on this, will be higher. So if you look at 416 at this end, you're probably more at about 49 feet than you are at 52.7. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea, and then you can see where the train tracks are and how much higher that is than where the proposed garage is going to be. Do you have a question? No? Okay, sorry.
Continue.
So the variance we're asking for this building height is the current garage is safe, but it's at the end of its useful life. As I said, it was a steel garage, and we'd like to replace it with a more efficient garage, and at the same time, put a couple stories more on there. The ground floor is higher in this proposed garage because we're accommodating for, we have an existing pump house that is located very closely to this. So our trucks or fire trucks, anything like that, would have to get onto the bottom level. And to do that, you need a higher floor to deck section there. We would also like to put our VEMS operation and ambulance storage in there. Presently, we have our ambulance, it's parked in the garage, but it's better for the ambulance to be inside of a building and warm, like it should be in a garage, just like our cars, so that, you know, when someone needs the ambulance, it should be warm. And so we would like to put it in here. It kind of creates a little home and it makes it more efficient. There's a synergy between our nursing school and our health services building, which is very close to this garage, that it would be really a nice place to put it. So again, the existing garage was approved for 3 levels. We're proposing this garage be 5 levels. And I showed you the grade change that I was talking about, which is approximately 3 feet. And a little later on, Chris will go over the long-range development plan, which, you know, proposes future capital projects that this garage would also help us with providing additional parking for those projects. The variance we're requesting for setback from the right-of-way and the property line is, again, it's the same setback that we have right now, but I believe that this actually improves the setback. If you can see the green, this green is all additional space that will become green space. So instead of us having a parking garage, this outline green is the existing parking garage outline. So all that becomes a greener area for us and not parking structure. And again, this would enhance, this location would enhance our resources to support our campus student-run EMS service, which is our VEMS group. Now I'm going to turn this, does anyone have any questions with the stuff that I've shared with you so far?
Yeah, just a couple.
Great.
How tall is the existing parking garage at this point?
You know, that's a good question. It's, do you have that? I mean, it's one level, so I'm going to say it's probably about, pardon? 2 levels. No, 2 levels, but 1 story, so it's probably around 16, 18 feet.
Got it. Let me ask this a different way. How tall, does anybody have an idea of how tall the 3-level structure would have been that you didn't build? What did you get approved for? How many feet?
It was not.
We didn't need a variance.
We didn't need it.
Okay,
Because,
so it was
because it was
conforming.
a 3-floor, you wouldn't need a variance, but we got a land development for 3, so it wasn't,
Okay, got
the
it.
structure was capable of going up another level.
I realize I may be jumping the gun here on your long-term development plan, but where are the 232 additional cars coming from?
They're not coming from, it's just if we were to build some of these capital projects, we will need additional parking. Will we need 232? No, we will not, but it's an opportunity. If you go up 1 level, that's kind of what the addition will be.
It's a code requirement.
No.
It's code requirement. It's not that we need the
Based on
additional
capital
parking.
project.
It's based on code requirement according to our current code, based on the capital projects that we look at the school to do in the next, I guess, 5 or 10 years.
But it's not a code
these are-
requirement now because the
Right.
projects aren't built.
Correct.
Right, so it's a code requirement for projects that you're thinking back in the, so why don't we bring those up to, let's bring those forward.
Sure, let me.
Tell us the projects
Yeah,
before we approve this garage.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll certainly allow you to present some of that.
Okay.
I do have additional questions. You did speak about the nearest home to this proposed structure. You mentioned a home that was occupied by Villanova students. Is it privately owned or is it owned by Villanova?
It's typically a rent, no, it is not owned by Villanova. It's a rental that has always been rented out to students.
Okay, got it.
As
That's
long
the
as
closest home.
That is the closest home.
Okay, got it. And besides, I guess we'll get to this with your long-term development plan, but this garage as it stands today, what buildings does it service?
It is on our main campus, so it serves Bartley, the nursing school, and events that happen for, basketball games, events that would happen in Bartley, the business school. It supports does it support SAC as well? Serves, okay. Well, for events, exactly. Normally.
If I'm coming to see you or
Okay.
go to Tolentine or whatever.
As a visitor, he would park there. We have assigned parking, though, for our campus.
Okay, got it. Assuming you do get relief at zoning with respect to height, I'm jumping the gun here, but there's going to be lighting on top of the structure, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and have you considered how much more height that lighting would be?
So I would like to, we will definitely study it, and through land development, we'll go through that process. But when we did the I-1 garage, which is the Eithing garage, we were very thoughtful in our lighting for that top deck. And when I say around the perimeter of that garage, we had lighting. So we did not have poles there. We had poles in certain areas in the center, and it was dark sky compliant light fixtures. So we really were very thoughtful and worked with the neighbors on that lighting.
Got it. Commissioners, do you have questions for the applicant so far? Should we dive into the land development, the long-term
I was
development
going to say,
plan?
not land development, please.
I had one, I noticed that you said that there was no access to the existing garage from Ithan until you went to the main gate. I was there with fellow Commissioner Matt Golis, and we accessed it from a lower driveway on Ithan without any trouble.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying, is you access, here's the main gate right here. You go through here.
We didn't have to go in the main gate. There was another, I think there was a gate further down on Ithan that you can access.
There's an access road that I can picture.
So
You
there,
can get there.
there actually is, in land development, we had an approval for a driveway right here, see? And we've never, I guess we would only use that in an emergency situation, but normally, there's no gate there.
It just struck me that there were two ways in from Ithan to this garage.
Not normally.
Well, on Sunday.
Yeah, let me go back to the, hold on.
Sunday
I would
lunchtime,
disagree. You can
there's
get in
two.
that, you can get in that access road any day of the week.
There- but it's
People that
not-
know where, no, people that know where that road is do all the day, every day, all day.
Are you-
Not no one does, just people that don't know better.
So this is, where is this that you're referring to?
It's behind, there's an access road if you're coming off of, is that County Line? County Line where it meets Ithan, and then you can make a right if you're coming from the north or the west. You can make a right up that access road, and it'll get you in there.
This is all curbed. This is the picture.
Mike, do you mean that,
Yeah.
the main entrance on Ithan, is that what we're
I'm
referring
talking
to?
about the access road on Ithan where all the utility trucks, the Villanova utility trucks park on an access road. I'm going to call it Ithan, somebody might want to call it County Line,
So that's not.
and I
to the-
believe that that's where he's talking about.
So that
I
is,
didn't do it, but you say you're
so there's a driveway on the other side of the bridge, but that's our driveway to Structural Engineering Teaching and Research Lab, the steam plant, and the facilities plant. That has no garage access at all.
It was on Sunday.
That's where you parked. You did not
No,
park
we
there.
actually got into the garage on the top and the bottom floor.
Okay, but you came through the front gate, I think.
Yeah, Skip, we had access to the other parts of the campus through that access road, but not into the garage that they're
No.
talking about.
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not
I
sure
know.
what road that is, but is that on the other side of the train tracks?
Yes,
I mean,
Exactly.
you can't get through on the train tracks, can you?
no.
the other thing we discovered was that you could, I didn't know this, but you can get to Spring Mill Road from the garage. So it's not, because I was under the impression that you were just going out to Ithan through the main gate.
Right.
You can go through the rest of the campus and exit on Spring Mill. I didn't realize that until we did it, so.
Right, and our event parking, if there's a game or some event, they will take you from the garage and take you through campus to go out on Spring Mill, so that we kind of, diversify the exits and don't have too much density in one spot.
Any further questions so far? All right, please continue.
I did have one question. You were discussing how high this was compared to a bunch of buildings, but in my opinion, Davis Center is the closest building to this garage. So how would this proposed structure relate to the Davis Center?
So I believe that's not in any of these, but I believe it's what? It's lower, and the reason that it's lower is because you're up high on a grade there. So that's why when you look from the neighborhood to this garage, it's blocked by Davis Center and the pavilion. So this building will not be higher than the Davis Center. I shouldn't say that. It shouldn't be higher than that.
Okay, because I did visit the site, and in my opinion, the Davis Center was 1 story higher than the current facility, and you're talking about going 2 to 3 stories higher than the current facility.
So let me,
I'm not quite sure how that's going to
let me
play
show
out.
you something. So when you look at this right here, this grade that goes down, right? And it's probably like 2.5 to 3 feet difference. If I come over to the Davis Center across the street, it's up probably about 10 feet before the building starts to go up. So this is low where this building is, and the Davis Center is high.
And how many stories is the Davis Center?
3. It's 3 floors, 2 stories.
So 10 feet, if you're saying, if you're correct, which I didn't measure this grade, if you're correct that the Davis Center starts 10 feet lower, 10 feet higher, and it's 3 stories, then 10 feet is a story, basically. So if this thing goes higher than 4 stories, then you're higher than the Davis Center. How high are you proposing to go?
How high does the Davis, I don't have that.
How many stories are you proposing for the parking garage?
4.
Plus the roof deck?
You measure it to the top deck, yes, by the code.
So how many stories of parking are there before the roof deck?
There are 5 levels of
5
parking.
levels, right, okay. And the Davis Center is 3 stories,
Yes,
okay.
but again, it's up higher, and the way you measure that is based on
So
from
the
grade.
Davis Center is one, so in my opinion, this is 1 story higher than the Davis Center.
Okay, yes, yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
well, that's not what you said, but okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
Did you look at any other locations on campus? Since we drove all over campus, I noticed that, like next to the future library building, the Kennedy, there's a bunch of basketball courts and tennis courts that are bigger than the footprint of the parking.
We did not look at that.
I admit that it would have to,
Do you want to talk, that, you know what, that gets into the long-range plan, and Chris can walk you through that. Let me know.
Hi, Chris Kowalski for Villanova University. I'll just jump in here and talk a little bit about what this structure is designed to support. In a way, I'll answer your question too, Skip. So the university is required, like all institutions, to provide and regularly update a institutional long-range development plan to the township. The most recent version that the university submitted was submitted last October. I have the narrative with me, but the visuals, we'll go through that a little bit, are here on the table. This version updates a version last submitted in early 2020. We did a public presentation here in this room on that long-range development plan where Bob Morrow and I from Villanova went through a lot of these projects. So that is available for you to see. This has some minor updates to it, but it's largely the same. So this is what the university has in mind over the next, you could see periods. The light blue is 1 to 3 years. The tan is 3 to 10, and then the green is 10 plus. This is not a roadmap of what will happen, but this is more an encapsulation of what we're thinking about how we anticipate the university will continue to use and enhance its physical plant. As Nick said, anytime we are adding space on campus or seek to add space, we must also add parking the way the code is written now. In certain cases, most recently when we came to you regarding the library or head of zoning, we were seeking relief from the waiver there. Our intent is not to grow our enrollment, but to better serve our student and community. And so these projects are designed to do that. So before I go through some of this, this area right here that you're talking about is adjacent to the parking deck that you were talking about, Skip. And then right here is where the tennis courts were. So we do envision some uses for this facility right here. We could put a parking structure adjacent to the parking structure that already exists. But as you can see, we envision a academic building potentially where the tennis courts / basketball courts are now. The reason why we're focused on, a main reason why we're focused on the structure that we're talking about tonight is that it already exists as parking. It's not as efficient as we'd like, and while it's safe, it's not built the way we'd like. And we're going to have to do something with that structure anyway. And so we thought the best and greatest use of that space would be to continue to use it as parking, but to make it better. And that's why we're seeking the variances we are to be able to maximize that space. As I said, we have this as a potential site. Also over here across Lancaster Avenue, on the surface lot where we recently built as part of the Commons and adjacent to the high speed line tracks. And you can see here for reference, this is a pedestrian bridge that goes to the church. So this spot back here could also be parking. But we're also conscious of where these parking structures are. We want to maximize the preservation of green space and buffer on campus. And we're also conscious of where we are regarding our neighbors. So there is a residential area immediately behind this location, and we're certainly sensitive to that. Another benefit of the facility that we're talking about tonight, as we talked about before, Mary Lou pointed out, the closest neighbors, we don't want to minimize our students, but their house is right here. There's actually twins, a twin with 2 residences right here. These houses the university owns. Across here is Lower Merion, but between Lower Merion and the project site is our property and the train tracks. So it is fairly isolated when it comes to community impact, and when we're talking about height, it does fit in with the relative height of the buildings in that vicinity. Some of the other projects that we've talked about, and I'll go from east to west. We've talked about potentially enclosing partially or all the east end of the stadium, renovating locker rooms in the part of the stadium that's been vacated by our football offices. Some of that work's already taken place. We do need to do something with Nevin. Nevin Fieldhouse is sorely in need of attention, particularly with the way the rest of that corner looks now. That is sort of the gap in the smile. Vasey Hall is slated for renovation very soon to turn that into a graduate hub and a center for our Office of Veterans and Military Services. We've already talked to you about our library plans for where the current bookstore is. The existing library itself. We know at some point we'll need to go in and redo our Mendel Science Center. The building is reaching close to the end of its, I wouldn't say useful life, but it's going to be sore need of upgrading in the near future. We've identified St. Mary's Hall as an opportunity for us to sort of re-envision that footprint. Over here on the western edge of main campus, this is 320 that runs parallel. We have a couple of existing older structures here, Chemical Engineering and White Hall, adjacent to John Berry Hall. We envision perhaps a STEM building here, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. This is Tolentine Hall. It's currently shaped as a U. There's a lot of work that needs to be done for Tolentine. Anybody who is in there as a student, it's exactly the same as it was when you were there. We need to change that, update that, and potentially close in that U to add some more usable space. Down here toward Campus Corner, we envision possibilities of new dormitories, perhaps, or administrative space. We've talked about potentially a welcome center near the new St. Thomas Way, and that's a surface lot next to the pedestrian bridge. This building currently serves as a small dorm, Moriarty Hall. We would love to really put some thought into whether or not this makes a better gateway, a better visitor experience for our admission visitors. And then finally, potential realignment of Aldwin Lane onto Route 320. So that's not the addition of space per se on campus, but it's marked here on a potential project. So this parking is part of what we could be coming before you to discuss over the next 3 to 5 to 10 to 15 years. There are other projects that will come up. Some of these projects will never come to fruition, but this is why we wanted to come and tackle this project now.
Mr. Kowalski, did I hear this correctly, that the need for additional parking is only driven by our code requirements? Is that your position?
I would say it's largely, only is awfully prescriptive, but I would say largely driven, yes.
Okay. So I've also heard that you're not planning to increase enrollment?
Correct.
Okay, got it. You are, however, building additional dorms, right? So in this long-term development plan, how many of these improvements could you characterize would require some sort of relief from zoning?
We haven't gotten that far down the planning path to really give you a solid opinion on that. I mean, you can see some of the locations of these properties are close to roads or railroad tracks or, property lines. If we were to come back to you and talk about enclosing the end of the football stadium, that would require zoning relief. It encroaches on the setback. But some of these are interior to campus and may not have any relief needed whatsoever. So it's really hard for me to tell until we get into the nitty-gritty of each project.
Sure, but I think 232 is a pretty real number in terms of parking spaces. I mean, you're not just coming up with that out of thin air. There must be some sort of calculation embedded in this plan.
I think that was based on what we could efficiently get out of the design. What was, in our view, the institution's view, a reasonable height and width of the building. What could we get out of it? And that's the number where it landed. It's not related to any use whatsoever of these projects.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
And I will amplify what Mary Lou was mentioning about who parks here. As Nick was saying, and I'm not sure everybody could hear it, our parking was really looked at and scrutinized as part of the transformation of Lancaster Avenue. We had a lot of conversations about parking before this board and others. And one of the things that came out of it was the original plan included a much larger parking structure right here in the I-1 garage. I think it was 2 more levels and a few hundred more cars. And what the township rightly pointed out is they wanted to not have that many cars all in one place, particularly after or before peak events. So they asked us to create parking in a more distributed way around campus. And it has really worked as part of our special events circulation plan that we developed in coordination with the township. So we have these areas of parking that we use for daily visitors, our employees, and for events that are around campus. So this garage, while it will have 232 more cars as proposed, would not necessarily they wouldn't all be coming at once, would all be for different uses, and particularly during special events, that traffic is being managed all the way through campus with police, curtailing the traffic at Ethan Avenue and also directing it on Spring Mill Road. So we're very conscious about where the parking is on campus and how it works, and this would be part of our special event circulation plan as well.
Mr. Kowalski, could you speculate if you're not granted the relief that you're seeking and you have to stay within the 38 feet in this new structure, what really changes? I mean, you're obviously going to have to get relief for parking requirements on the other things that you're willing to do, but beyond that, is there really any challenge here?
I'm not sure I'm the best one to speculate. I think obviously we'd like the relief for the reasons we expressed, the factors that we're considering. But if we're not granted the relief, we'll do our best to maximize the space the best we can within the rights that we do have.
Okay, got it. Commissioners?
Is there a copy of the approval you got years ago for 3 stories for that site that you only built 2?
There's a zoning approval that I believe is in the packet, but it's like a 1-paragraph approval. If it's there, I'll have to pull my file out. Normally I attach it, but it was a I can find it. Now, on the land development, I did not have the land development plan. We probably could provide that if necessary as to the land development approval.
I think some of the early neighbor concern is that the railroad overpass and the connection to the county line is already very difficult, and somehow, some way, this traffic for this new parking facility is going to be on that road. And that's why I think I brought up, for example, another site a little further away from all this, or maybe even, of course, Spring Mill is no treat either, but at least it's not unsafe, it's just crowded.
I'm not sure that there's going to be a significant change in the traffic patterns to the university. We're not adding classroom seats, we're not adding employee headcount, we're not adding numbers of events. We haven't changed the capacity of the pavilion or the stadium or any of the other events venues that we currently have in place. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm not sure that much changes as far as impact is concerned.
With all due respect, you did let us know that you're planning to add dorms, you're planning to add a STEM building, you're definitely adding to the library. I mean, that to me screams more people.
The dorms are designed to support the student body that we have now. We've seen, particularly from the development of the Commons, the last dorms we built in the late 90s, early 2000s on West Campus, there's an overwhelming desire for more on-campus living space, and we want to try to meet that. Certainly as we build structures, if there is an increase in employee headcount, certainly we'll be back before you to discuss that. But on a day-to-day basis, our strong belief is that there's not much traffic flow change to this part of campus. So as you look at the projects before you on this map, you can see where those facilities are. Perhaps if they were clustered on this part of campus, then there might be some validity, at least to this kind of speculation, that there would be an increase in people coming to this part of campus. But as you can see, what we envision is designed to be spread out around campus. And people like to be where they sit for the whole day. So, to the best we can, we'll continue to try to get them there. But this is just a tool on our chest to try to address some of these concerns that we see coming down the pike.
As a matter of policy, do you currently restrict your parking by class size? Some institutions restrict freshmen from having cars on campus. Do you currently do that?
Right now, freshmen and sophomore students are largely restricted from having cars on campus. There are exceptions that are requested for medical, religious purposes, things like that. But our policy is that freshmen and sophomores are not allowed to have cars on campus.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Is the garage full every day? Your current one?
I don't have an observation on that. I don't know the answer to that. I think it depends on the class day and the days of the events.
There truly is no calculation that we came up with as 232 extra spots. It just turned out that when we designed this facility and we went up one extra level, we got 232 extra spots. Not on the one level, but total. So to us, it was an opportunity that if we're going to build to try to preserve green space, we're going to need parking, obviously, in the future for something. And even if we didn't need it for some of these buildings, it's always nicer to have some parking that's close to the events so that we are dispersing parking from Ethan I-1 garage to possibly HSB garage. Skip, where did you park at the?
You don't know whether the garage is full every day?
I'm sure that on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, certain days, it is absolutely full. But is it full all day long? I don't know that. There's.
It would be helpful to know. Actually, I think the more parking you put there, the less people driving around the neighborhood. They can get there, park. But if it's,
right.
I
Well,
gather if
so
it's
the
full
way,
now, you.
So I think the way that our parking is designed on campus is that everyone is given a certain spot where the employees, staff, students are given a parking lot to go to. So, I park by the steam plant. I can't just go park at the I-1 garage, unless I guess I want to pay. But typically that's how it's assigned, and it works pretty well. We don't have, anyone parking in the neighborhoods that we're aware of, or if there is, it's a minimal amount. So we were trying to just capture some space while we do this.
No, I understand, once you start building, to go in other floors.
You've
already put in the infrastructure for it.
Right. And
Is this,
just to add,
is this garage on a separate property?
no. So Skip, and I just want to kind of go to, like, the sites that you were speaking to are still off of Ithan Avenue. So both ways, I'm going into the same spot. I'm coming down Ithan, making a left, and, I understand where you went on Saturday or Sunday, but it was when you passed the railroad tracks, and I think you went down our driveway, which is just a surface parking area. This is the garage HSB that we would be replacing. So even to go further into campus, you're just bringing the cars further into campus. And we are trying to be a pedestrian-friendly campus. So wherever we can get surface parking out of the way and into these garages and tidy it up is really kind of part of the goal.
Being a graduate, one of the things that surprised me is how much more built up the campus is today than it was 50 years ago.
It's a good thing, right?
Well, it's not all good, but I mean, there must be a finite limit to what, even if it's allowable, it's not sustainable. The way the road structures are, you just have Ithan and Spring Mill. I mean, you're really kind of stuck. The train blocks the other county line access mainly.
Yeah.
But, I was just speculating before this meeting that where's the line draw? I mean, is there a line draw? You can build more, but then you need more parking, and then you can build more, but then you need more parking. I mean, how far do we go?
Yeah, I was going to make a related comment. I don't have the benefit of reviewing the long-term development plan that you submitted to the township. I take it that there wasn't a parking and circulation study that was a part of that, was it? Was there?
Not as part of that submission, no.
Do you know the car sort of ownership rate of your students, the juniors and seniors, the graduate students? Is there a metric that you?
We do, and I'm not very close to it right now. I was very close to it when we were developing Lancaster Avenue, and it was more like 50%.
And which direction is that trending? Is that trending down or is it trending up?
It seems to have stabilized at that, because what we built for the commons and the development has actually worked quite well for our campus.
I guess I'm also kind of feeling the sentiment of my fellow commissioners here, which is 15 years is a long time from now.
Mm-hmm.
We're investing or we're deciding on a 230-something space parking garage when 15 years ago, if you told me that there would be electric cars driving around all over Radnor, I would have told you that's science fiction. So I just wonder, 15 years from now, are we really going to be using parking garages to the extent that we think that we're going to be using them? I have some clients, and there are some studies out there that are designing parking garages to be converted at a later time into office buildings, because we don't think we're going to be so reliant on cars anymore. Is that some thinking that you are willing to consider?
To design it that it can be converted to an office building?
Or to an institutional building, yep.
I would guess, we would have to see, I would think if that was the case, then we would probably convert it at that time. I wouldn't build it today for that in the possibility that it could happen in 15, 20 years. I don't think.
If you don't mind, I just wanted to turn this back into zoning. And I'm not going to ask you to prove out your zoning case in front of us, but could you define what the hardship here is for us? I think Mr. Cornelia.
Yeah, I believe we've already discussed that, but to kind of summarize, really there is no other place on campus to add this parking. Also, this particular structure is already a parking structure. It is not impacting any of the other residential neighborhoods or nearby neighborhoods. The issue, as you're well aware, is that the code, our code, requires certain parking requirements. And of course, Villanova can't even consider these other projects unless they have sufficient parking according to the code. And so that's what really all this stems from, is so that the university can determine whether they can build these other projects, and really they're infrastructure projects. They're not adding any traffic, they're not adding any parking. Perhaps I know we have a requirement for dormitories. I believe right now about 2/3 of our students reside on campus. There's always a push to have more reside on campus, and that actually reduces traffic by having them reside on campus. So the general overall feeling is that the project not only benefits the university, but also tends to benefit the other areas surrounding the university, because it's limited to this particular section of campus where a structure already exists. So
I have a hard time understanding why there's no other place on campus for this thing. I do understand you're going to scrape the site. You're going to want to maintain the setback nonconformities. I get all of that. My issue here is that you're asking for a lot of height, and I'm just not seeing the hardship here. You have other ways to go. You have other sites to consider here.
Well,
and by the way, for the record, your other statement was that there's no impact on neighborhood. There's certainly a visual impact. I realize that a lot of it is not Radnor Township, it's Lower Marion, but there's still impact.
I believe it's minimized, the impact, the visual impact, if there is any. Perhaps when you're driving down North Lathan, you would certainly observe it. I think because you're blocked by the tracks and you're blocked by other buildings, I don't know if there's any visual impact on the surrounding area.
I'm not going to speak for Skip, but being on the site, standing on the top of the garage, and Ian, can you put up some of those slides that we took? Looking at the adjacent buildings, height was not one of the waivers that I was going to oppose, because I think it's a non-existent problem, frankly. I don't know if Ian has these. We took shots that would show basically how much taller the buildings around the garage are.
Okay.
Thank you, Ian. So that's a building that would be I guess, a health center or whatever. Yes. So that's the top of the present garage. So if it goes up 2 more floors, it's going to be 2 more floors, right?
Actually, 3 more.
3 more. Okay. So it'll be slightly higher than the health building.
So that's the Davis Center, correct?
No,
Davis Center is across the street.
Okay.
I think
And if you, Ian, if you could move through, you can keep going there. Skip and I were impressed with the deterioration that was going on. I mean, it was like I didn't want to stay underneath there.
that's part of the issue.
Yeah. I mean, it's rotten. All that steel's gone. That's the pumping station that would stay in this project. Okay, that's the Davis building. No. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So the Davis building, trust me, I mean, they can put three floors on this parking garage. I don't think it's going to be over the Davis building or higher. I don't think so. Doesn't look like it. So there's both buildings. And then if there is one slide of a building, a newer building behind it to the west. Keep going. Oh, maybe I didn't. No, I don't want that. But anyway, so the newer, more modern building that's to the west, I guess, is also as high as the Davis building in my view. I wish I had that shot. I thought I took it, but I guess I didn't. Anyway.
I think what we're missing, Commissioner Golis, is the residential neighborhood, the pictures you didn't take.
Well, we drove around the stadium area, the roads behind there. There was no sense of anything on this part of the campus from there. On the Lower Marion side, those houses would see the new garage. They might see parts of the old garage, but I'll tell you what they're going to see right now. All the current buildings that have been put up are in their face. So it's not like this garage is going to be like the big thing in their view shed, because there's a lot of other stuff in their view shed now. Skip, please add your thoughts on that.
Well, you have to replace that garage right away. I guess that's why the sign was there, park at your own risk and all that. But I hadn't seen that on campus before. So anyway, I don't have a big problem with the height. I think my primary concern is what impact it'll have, additional impact on traffic on Ithan. And, you know, you already have that little bottleneck with County Line and Ithan on the other side of the train tracks. I don't know what you can do to mitigate that, but doubling the amount of cars there doesn't seem like an ideal fit. And so even though I don't have a problem with the height, maybe it's better to just go 3 stories like you were approved 20 years ago and put more parking somewhere else on campus.
I'd like to make a comment. First of all, I understand, to me it makes sense to replace a garage with a garage. As far as like traffic flow, I don't understand what the problem is. You're getting to it from Ithan, so whether you put it here or you move it in further into campus, it's the same ingress. So I don't see that the traffic is an issue there. And I didn't have a problem with the height either.
I think the concern for me, as far as traffic, is where it's sited close to that choke point under the railroad tracks.
But the whole way you get into campus is through that entrance. Yeah. So whatever you do in campus, parking, building, I mean, that's where you're going. I don't know that it has anything to do with, you know, the bridge there or the.
You're giving them a reason to go there by increasing the number of cars that you're able to park.
Isn't it just a matter of rerouting the traffic?
It's campus. I don't know.
Any other commissioner comment?
With the parking on South Campus, I would say that you're routing the people to South Campus, which is the newer parking garage. And then the other thing that was mentioned is, I heard part of the argument was that you tried to disperse the parking throughout the campus so that there wasn't any main choke throat. But by putting 232 extra parking spots right next to the pavilion, I'm pretty sure what they're trying to achieve. Basketball games and 250 more VIP, donors can park that much closer. Tell the donors to park down on South Campus, and then that choke throat for the residents that live on Ithan and County Line won't affect as much, I believe.
Why don't we
within their approval
restrict the movement out of the garage and have it all go toward Lancaster Avenue? I mean, you can change the traffic patterns here.
How are we going to change the traffic patterns?
Well, they would have to suggest that. I mean,
I already thought they said they directed the traffic out to Spring Mill after events to avoid this in the first place. So we're talking about something that's already in place, as I understand it.
Yeah, we're talking about events here, not day-to-day. And this is primarily going to be a day-to-day use. Having said that, any other commissioner comment?
I would just echo Lane's comments. I think it made sense overall, you know, in terms of replacing a garage, which obviously needs replacing with the garage, and I didn't see, you know, really a problem. I guess the assuming they incorporate the same lighting they were talking about on the other garage that they have at the Spring Mill with the minimal impact, I think that was one of the biggest concerns I saw from the public comments. We haven't heard from the public yet, but I mean, in terms of the height and fitting in, I think it makes sense, and I think they explained the traffic situation fairly well. And I lived in that neighborhood for 6 years. I'm very familiar with that. There ain't nothing but blowing up that bridge and making it wider that's ever going to solve that traffic issue there.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to state for the record that I feel, I mean, this is not Villanova's, the burden should not be on Villanova because they clearly are looking at the code, and I feel like the code is old, and we need to update that code. And they're planning for something a decade in the future, looking at something 2 decades ago. And that's the point I'm trying to make, is like, well, maybe we need to be updating the code.
Yeah, in response to that, they were here on November 7th. They were here for the library. The library required certain parking minimum. We recommended that zoning grant relief on that, and we were fairly quick to do it. I think it was a unanimous decision. Certainly, you know, every situation's different, but we're willing to consider it. I think to my view, and perhaps Mr. Kim's, Commissioner Kim's as well, is that there's a real danger in having over parking rather than under parking. Anybody else? We'll hear from the public next. All right, public comment. Please come up, state your name, where you live.
Sarah Pilling, 29 Garrett Avenue. I've been here for 41 years. I drive the county line road all the time. In my former career, I was a standardized patient in the nursing school. We were not allowed to park in that parking garage. I had to get, the nursing school gave me special permission as an older person because the commons had not been built, so we had to park down on the other side of Lancaster Pike. And so I had special permission. There were never more than 10 or 15 cars there. It was really not used. At the time I was a standardized patient. I've not been a standardized patient for perhaps the last 5 years. My issue is traffic. And I'd like to show you what I consider a pinch point. Several of you have talked about it, which is, and if I can use this. I know how to do it. If I could get it. All right, here's the point, which county line, and this is Ithan Avenue. This is the railroad tracks. My house, as the crow flies, is only about 2 blocks. My house would be here, where my pen is. So I feel that I'm sort of qualified to look at it. This is the railroad tracks. This is where county line comes down here, goes under the tunnel, and goes down here. North Ithan, you can't see it because of the trees, comes straight across. And it gets worse from there. So this weekend, I took a series of pictures because I think you all know this choke point. I'm on county line. North Ithan's coming in here. Over this way is Montgomery. This is the twins with 2 driveways. There were 2 cars in each driveway who were coming out in here, taken from the same spot, if I can get my fingers to work. Well, let me put it down this way. Again, I'm on County Line. North Ithan's here. The houses are here. And this is this service road on this side of the railroad tracks. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 places plus the student housing all coming out to the same thing. It's dicey at the very best of times. And then this is the SEPTA tunnel overpass, whatever you want to call it, which is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass unless you're really careful. And if there's a truck, and as a matter of fact, there's a sign here, and I think I have the close-up that shows, it says opposing traffic does not stop. So people, residents, trucks, students are coming up North Ithan Avenue to the bridge. They've got County Line coming in on an angle, and they have the right-of-way, so we end up, or the person coming south or east ends up sitting here to wait till the northbound traffic can get through, because you really, it's very dicey, and I have a smaller car to get through. In addition, there's a fenced walkway on this side of the tunnel for students to come across here. And I have deep concern that if they build an additional 232 parking spaces, what's going to happen to this pinch point? One thing they could do is they could only take a right onto North Ithan to go back to Lancaster Pike. I just don't see any other way. It's a very dicey situation right now, let alone them rebuilding a parking garage that I really don't think is used that much. It's, use it at your own risk. But I never saw it. I never saw the ground floor of it full. I could always find a parking space. But again, I was only allowed to use it by permission from the nursing school. So I just wanted to bring that issue up because it's all jammed in there together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pilling. We do have a commissioner here, Commissioner Farhi.
Thanks. I have a couple questions, Nick or Chris, if you could help address them. But I do want to thank the board and, for their comments, their thoughtful comments, as well as Villanova for being here. And I do have some questions that I would like to ask, as this will not go in front of the Board of Commissioners, it's my understanding. And as a commissioner of Ward 7, which is directly across the street, and that underpass may or may not, the northern underpass may or may not be in my ward. But to the board's point, I do think it was pretty simply stated. I'm just going to try to restate it, that the hardship is always going to be a chicken or the egg scenario. You don't have enough parking to do this, and we can't do that. Now we have it, so it's going to go back and forth. My understanding is a few years back with the CICD, they put a big parking garage, which is needed and probably looks a lot nicer than a large parking lot. A few years back, they also added height to, is that near the R5? You added 2 levels by the R5, is that correct? On that parking lot? You kind of like in between like the law school and you added how many?
The law school?
Is it between the law school on, I guess on Spring Mill?
Yes.
On the east side of Spring Mill?
One level.
One level, okay. So then there's an additional parking there. So it just feels that there's always going to be more and more parking, and I get it that you as a university need to grow and shuffle cars around. So I guess my first or my second concern is the height. I'm hearing from this board the height is not an issue to them, but it is to me and to my residents. So while the view shed may be restricted, we'll say, from the trees. I don't know with the lights. So if they do go as high as 50, I guess it's 52, 53 feet, and then you're going to add lights on top of that. That structure is going to be, an 8 or 9 foot light pole. Is going to be close to 60 feet on up. So while if you do need parking, and was it Mr. Vines, what you said, replace a parking lot with a parking lot, that makes sense. If you need parking, absolutely. I guess why can't some of those parking, and I know that there may be an issue with the train, but could you go underground? Could you go underground? Because for me, a lot of it is with the height. They're more concerned with the traffic, and I'll address that. I'm actually, as you know, I'm concerned with height and lighting. Could you go underground a level or two?
In this spot, it would be very difficult to go underground. Many of our major utilities are 3 feet below the grade there. Specifically, when we transferred all the sanitary from Radnor to Lower Merion, it runs right through that parking lot and ties into Lower Merion on County Line Road. So there's a lot of utilities that go through that lower level there. So we could probably go down a foot maybe, but not much more than that.
Okay. And my next question is, and this is to Nick, have letters gone out to the local residents as well as residents in Lower Merion?
Sean, there is a requirement that letters go out to, I believe it's within 500 feet of the property line as the crow flies. And I know they go out to Radnor residents. I don't know if they go out to Lower Merion residents or not. Have we sent the notices out? Okay, the notices would be in the zoning file, which I don't have, but whoever received the notice, we're required to certify that they received the notice. I don't know. I know Lower Merion gets the advertisement, yeah, but I don't know if their individual neighbors are notified or not.
I think that would help, and and if you reached out to Andy Gavrin, and I do really appreciate that. I think it's on Thursday. I'll give a little promo for you. You're having a neighbor Zoom meeting for this, which I think is wonderful and great. I would hope that you could reach out to the Lower Merion commissioners as well and see if they have, if that's something that they would want to share with their residents. So thank you for that. And then just one last point. And if you do add traffic here, and to Ms. Pilling's point and to the board's point, you do have that pinch point where basically Radnor, we're obviously very well known for a lot of traffic, bridge strikes. So as you divert traffic from anywhere from away from Spring Mill, and these people that if there's a game or an event or a graduation, and maybe there are police there or not, but they're not police by, I guess, the South Dorms necessarily, or right at the county line, Radnor border where Spring Mill is. If they do divert, they look on their Waze or their GPS, there could be additional bridge strikes there, and that would really bottleneck either any event that you guys would have, as well as our neighbors and issues with SEPTA, the trolley line, et cetera. Have you, what are your thoughts about that with the bridge strikes and potentially using that, because that is, you're going to have cars parked there, and sometimes they are during peak hours. Rush hour people want to get there a little bit before the game, enjoy the festivities, et cetera. So has there been any thought or to that effect?
I think as we've mentioned before, when we're using this facility as it exists now for special events, particularly for men's basketball, it is assigned parking. So the folks that are going there are used to that traffic circulation. There are police at that intersection at the main entrance to campus and the Pavilion Drive, directing people in and across pedestrians and vehicles. Same can be true at larger events such as commencement. And then all of our events throughout the year have, larger events have some sort of police presence, maybe not specifically at that intersection, but many of them do, but certainly at the intersections of Ithan and Lancaster. So from a traffic management standpoint, for events, we feel like the flow is very well managed. There's certainly no way to discuss with any certainty whether or not this would lead to more bridge strikes. I think what we found, particularly anecdotally from my observations when we're talking about King of Prussia Road Bridge, the bridge strikes are coming from people who are not familiar with this area. For many of our events, our folks are familiar with the area. So I'm not sure that there's a direct link to be drawn right now to that.
Okay, and just while you're up there, just would you be comfortable sharing that link of the presentation and then the Zoom as well? And I'm happy to share that with my residents if you're comfortable.
The presentation?
Yeah, the presentation, and then I can share if there's a...
For the meeting on Thursday?
Yeah, and as well as this, or the slides that you want.
The long-range development plan?
Or is that going to be, or is that kind of redundant? Is that going to be?
Oh, we're going to be doing that as part of the meeting.
Okay, so you'll go through that
Yep.
on Thursday? Okay,
Yep.
great.
Yep.
Thank you, Chris.
So I just had a follow-up question for the commissioner and maybe for Chris. As far as bridge strikes go, I'm affected by bridge strikes over at King of Prussia Road. Those are caused by large box trucks going under the bridge. I don't think any box trucks are going to be parking in your garage.
No, so if I can just answer that, but as they divert, so if you're seeing a large backup, right, obviously the more parking spots potentially, the more cars. So if there's backups and people want to try to navigate around, you could potentially see, because you do hit a pinch point, where they may want to skirt around County Line Road, or they may not be familiar with that, if it is during peak times. That was my point.
Additional public comment? Come on up.
I'd like to thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Roberta Winters, 326 Williams Road, and I appreciate the opportunity to provide comments this evening. I believe what happens at Villanova does not stay at Villanova. It really impacts the greater township. Among Radnor's most pervasive problems are traffic, parking, and stormwater. Replacing the existing parking garage with one that is 53 feet high and holds 405 vehicles may reduce a parking concern, but it is bound to impact traffic, congestion, and create potential environmental issues. Height restrictions have been a significant hot button item in the 7th Ward, particularly when this is in a residential area. And that does exist in County Line Road and adjacent Lower Marion streets. Now, traffic, I believe the garage is going to create more problems because of its location. Ithan Avenue is already a busy thoroughfare between Lancaster and Montgomery Avenue. The intersection with County Line Road at this spot is particularly hazardous, as Ms. Pilling has noted. The right-of-way confusion and limited vision around a sharp curve under a narrow railroad bridge are problematic, to say the least. SEPTA is unlikely to alter that bridge. Will construction in some way alter the stability of this, undermine the stability under this underpass or the adjacent tracks? This is also less than ideal spot for emergency exits for entrance or egress. Planning must be provided to be proactive to prevent accidents that hindsight will regret. Traffic studies are really needed. The bridge under the tracks, again, is only suitable for one car. There's a really weird traffic pattern at this intersection that allows some through traffic while others halt. It's already confusing to drivers. Also, Ithan Avenue is now designated with bike lines in the area beginning near the South Dorms and Aldwin Lane. How will additional traffic impact the newly designated bike route? Further, to go from Conestoga or Lancaster to the expanded lot, drivers would most likely use Lowry's Lane and County Line. Lowry's Lane is already too narrow for easy two-way traffic. From Montgomery Avenue, drivers might use 320 and County Line or Airedale and Orchard Way. What do residents on these streets think about hundreds of more cars in their neighborhoods? I doubt if it will increase property values, improve air quality, or reduce noise or light pollution. However, Villanova has found ways to purchase homes in vicinities close to development, and they will again probably do so that they will be taken away from Radnor's tax base as a result of Villanova's 400-car parking lot. Parking. Now, Villanova is known to solve problems and hopefully teaching its students and alumni to follow rules and regulations. Because residents don't like cars used by those attending events to park on Ithan Avenue, County Line Road, or in the neighborhoods. But who's ticketing? Who is towing? Given the university's emphasis on sustainability, what incentives are being provided for SEPTA passes to ease the myriad of evils created by private vehicles? Blessed by train, trolley, and bus routes that provide access to worldwide transportation venues, why does Villanova need more parking? Public transit is there. Lyft and Uber service the campus. When the CIC district was approved, we were told there were no more parking was needed. However, in order to meet code, they incorporated non-CIC district areas adjacent to the CIC district. Challenges to the need for parking and this use of adjacency for Villanova properties was not adequately addressed. So just what are the compelling needs on which such a variances are being requested? Is the shrinking the size of the spaces around the campus and just not the garage really necessary or a mere convenience? If the university can collaborate to find parking for the Pope's last visit, they surely should be able to find spaces at off-peak hours from other existing commercial and institutional spaces in the area, in addition to creating creative scheduling, shuttles, and even car services that can also be options. Now, I have some environmental concerns as well. We're fortunate that Villanova has an acclaimed monitoring of hotspots, indicating what's happening as a result of their increasing footprint. Will the impact of more cars and parking spots really cool this area? Will the engineers really be able to address stormwater management? You can see the pump station on the diagram. You can see the streams of water running down Ithan Avenue under the bridge when it rains. Is this a source area for our local streams? We're told it's over on that side of the campus. While there is projected to be a small decrease in paved areas, does this include the additional paving the university did this summer to widen the drive off Ithan Avenue onto the campus? Will the engineers just move the water into the next county or municipality, just as they've done with the sewage? Are the rain gardens they've provided really working? Are they being maintained and continually assessed for their effectiveness? Planning needs to be done not just on Radnor Township basis, but across the township and county lines. Radnor is no island unto itself. Data is needed to help decision-making as planners need to look to future generations, as Mr. Kim noted. Now, I'm glad Mr. Kowalski showed us some of the updated plans that Villanova should be sharing with us. And I know there were lots of question marks on some of the most recent plans. And this documentation provided by the university to accompany this request is impressive, but I think it's inadequate based on omission. For example, we see the heights of all buildings above 38 feet on campus, and we've seen some of the pictures around it. But again, this is not the most picturesque part of the campus. The present height seems consistent with that site. And while the projections of its prospective appearance are shown from different locations, what is really missing is what it looks like when you looking at that building from the stop sign of County Line Avenue on County Line Road as one emerges from under the railroad tracks on Ithan Avenue. Some people would like to see 50-foot walls built, but I'm not sure this is the place for it. It adds little to the quality of our life. Now, permits have timelines and fees come along with them that have helped keep our tax base low. However, Radnor is in the midst of a development of a comprehensive land use plan. I believe this project should be put on hold until this document is complete. Additional needs for parking and mitigation require further documentation and justification by an objective party. Traffic studies and bike trail impacts need to be done, and stormwater management and other environmental issues must be addressed. You've all heard the saying that the only way to eat an elephant is a bite at a time. As a community member, I believe the neighborhoods, communities, municipalities, and counties are eaten the same way. I really fear that Villanova is eating those who live here, the properties that we own, and the quality of life we value, one bite at a time. This is an opportunity for you to say, enough is enough. Thank you.
Any additional public comment? All right. If I may take the liberty to speak, you're going to have a challenging time proving hardship here. This campus sits at an incredible confluence of public transportation. All I heard tonight is a bunch of circular arguments that necessitate additional parking because of future development or future development necessitating additional parking. We've certainly, in my recent history here at the Planning Commission, we've been willing to listen to you and grant you relief on parking requirements, knowing that our code probably is a bit too conservative. But you really can't have it both ways. You can't have, say, we're going to limit enrollment growth and also request for additional parking, which would scream to me additional enrollment. You've answered a lot of questions tonight. We do appreciate that. I think the kind of transparency that's required here is a deeper dive into your long-term development plan. You've certainly met a portion of that burden, but this is what we as Radnor Township residents expect from a developer such as Villanova. I'm going to take the liberty as chair to be suggestive for a second, and don't confuse that with admonition. There's no tolerance for that here, but I will say that, not to quote Gloria Gaynor here, we saw you on November 7th. We gave you what you wanted on the library, and now you're back from outer space, right? Seeking similar relief, using the same arguments for height requirements. And as for me, I have a hard time rationalizing whether this is a one-off or this is a programmatic sort of plan of development that we're just not privy to. And that is not good planning. It's certainly not what we expect as residents. I do want to say that I want to encourage you guys. I want to encourage you guys to come in and really take advantage of everything that we have to offer you in terms of coming in and actually going in with a sketch plan. For the listening audience, the sketch plan review is an informal review of your development plans where we can make comments and you guys can make revisions before committing to an all-in plan. Additionally, it allows the township residents to make comments as well. And I have to say that you're out of turn. You're in front of us today. You are having a resident review meeting on Thursday, which is great, but I would argue that that should have preceded you coming here. And of course, you have zoning on the 16th. I think if you were to build additional bridges with the community, and that is what is required here. I'm going to say that for the third time. I would say that in addition to the public comment that we received here, we received 2 other written submissions from Atish Long and Rick Leonardi and Cynthia Kellogg. The public's pretty unanimous in its opposition to this. I think we need to hear more, and I think we need to hear more how that'll benefit the township. I think what we're hearing here is a tremendous amount of distrust from the public, and I think most of the successful projects that we've seen, I don't want to reference one, but I think, Mr. Cornelia, you're familiar with it, 150 to 168 Lancaster Avenue, followed the process that I outlined, and that's what we expect here. Having said that, is there any additional commissioner comment before we call a vote?
Yeah, I think that because you were here, I feel like you're just picking away at this at the campus, and I don't feel like there's a comprehensive plan that this is fitting into. And the reason I asked whether this was on a single property is, and you said no, which means it's on one giant property, then it should be considered in relationship to all of the rest of your property. Because we don't, if it was on a separate little property, we'd have to deal with it that way, but it's not, you know. And so it's surprising to me, you don't know how many cars park there every day. It's surprising to me that it's just not a very thoughtful presentation out of overall with respect to your campus or respect to the community. So so that's all I have to say.
All right. In the matter of zoning hearing board appeal number 3155, Villanova parking, I'm going to make a motion to recommend denial. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm not saying aye, I'm actually saying I'm neutral. I've changed my thoughts a little bit tonight.
So we have how many ayes? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 ayes. 5. We have Kunda, who's neutral, and do we have a nay? Lane Vines with a nay, and Commissioner Brubaker.
Yeah, I'll go with Kip on the neutral.
I'm sorry, could we do that again, please?
Yeah, all in favor say aye.
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 All right, Lahota, Kim, Golas, Fruman, and Varenhorst. All neutral. Brubaker and Kunda. And nay? Vines. All right,
So
thank you.
Neutral is abstain, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Good luck at zoning. All right. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good night.